This is my 7th video on my attempts to construct a small OO gauge layout. See part 1 for my reasons for doing this and my lengthy series on my N-gauge model railway for more interesting stuff with trains actually running, etc. This part is really a break from my layout development as such to look at a Hornby LMS travelling post office set that I picked up on eBay. Although the layout is still far from complete, I took a little break from kit building and grass flocking, etc. to check out this model and to see if I could actually get the TPO bag pick-up and drop-off functions to work on my layout, which is built not with Hornby track but with Bachmann Easy track, although I'm increasingly thinking that I would have been better off to have used Hornby track or Pico. Anyway, here's the idea of the set that I bought. R4155 LMS Operating Royal Mail Coach Set. The London, Midland and Scottish Railway, the LMS, has always been the most significant target of my railway modelling as my family worked for this company. On my N-gauge layout I broadened to modelling operations of all of the big four, the LMS, the LNER, SR and GWR, while staying with the post-amalgamation pre-World War II period. Since my OO gauge layout is functionally much smaller, I've only been buying LMS rolling stock in OO gauge, so I was particularly pleased to be able to get a travelling post office in proper LMS livery, entirely appropriate to my prototype. Here are the contents of the box as they were when I first opened this set. Versions of the operating TPO similar to this set have been made since the Triang days, but this set is a newer version, and it appeared that mine had never really been used at all as the bag containing the small parts was still heat sealed. Here you can see the operating instructions. Of course, since I'm using Bachmann Easy Track, these instructions largely won't really work for me in as much as they deal with clipping the parts specifically into Hornby track. Here I've got the coach out of its tissue paper and all of the small parts out of their bag. The green kiosk at left is intended to receive mail bags as they're dropped off. The 4 small red pieces in the middle, which are topped by loops, represent the mail bags. The 2 dark brown bases in the centre are intended for the pickup hook and the drop-off bin. The forked clips at top right would allow you to fasten those bases correctly and firmly up against the track, if you were using Hornby track. Underneath those are the pieces for the pickup hook, the hook itself, a supporting post and a ladder. Finally, under those are the 2 sprung bumpers that are intended to fit into the middle of the track to push up the levers that operate the pick-up and drop-off mechanisms of the coach. Here you can see the coach on the bench. Just below the M of the word mail, you'll see 2 curved pieces facing down underneath the coach. Those are the 2 levers that operate the pick-up and drop-off mechanisms. To work properly, the coach must be proceeding from right to left, as seen here. When the left-hand lever under the coach is pushed up by the sprung buffer on the track offset to the left side, the pickup arm will swing out, as seen here, to take a mailbag off from the hook, which is placed beside the track. Conversely, when the right-hand lever is pushed up by the sprung buffer offset to the right side, the drop-off arm will swing out, allowing a mailbag, if there is one in it, to drop into the bin beside the track. Here's the coach upright with the pickup arm out, as it would be to catch a bag off the hook. And here's the drop-off arm out. As you may see, it's open at the bottom, so when it swings out, any bag in it will fall beside the track. Here's a view of the operational side of the coach in its resting position with neither arm out. As such, it's quite an accurate representation of an LMS mail coach. Here's the view of the coach from the opposite, non-operating side. Note that the royal insignia says GR for Georgius Rex. The LMS came into being upon amalgamation in 1923 when George V was king, and continued until nationalisation in 1948. George VI became king in 1936 and was still king at the time of nationalisation. The only other monarch during the existence of the LMS was Edward VIII, who was briefly king in 1936 until his abdication. Here's a picture of a real LMS mail coach. Note that it really is very similar to the model. In this picture, the two doors are open and mailbags are being hung out below those doors for drop-off. The net for picking up bags is extended at the far end of the coach. Here's a somewhat clearer version of the central part of the picture. The markings and proportions are quite similar to the model. Here's a close-up of the pickup net and the rear door and drop-off hooks. As you may see, bags for drop-off were actually hung on frames swung out below the doors. There wasn't anything corresponding to the drop-off arm as it exists on the model. On the real coaches, the area that the model uses for pick-up and drop-off was actually all part of the pickup net. Here's a picture of how the real coaches appeared when no bags were out for drop-off, the doors were shut and the pickup net was folded, i.e. as the coach would be during normal proceeding when no actual bag transfer was taking place. This picture is from British Railways days after nationalisation, as I couldn't find a picture of a coach in LMS livery in this condition, but the coach is essentially exactly the same design. So here's the model again with some clarification of how the various parts correspond to the real coaches. As noted, the two swing-out arms on the model both actually occupy the space that would have been the pickup net on the real coaches. The arms on which bags for drop-off were hung on the real coaches are represented on the model below the doors, but they are in their folded position and are not operational in any way. The mail drop box on the side of the coach and the two lamps beside the doors are also represented on the model, albeit in somewhat limited detail. Here's a model mail coach coupled to a loco on my layout. This is actually not the coach that came with the new set. It's one I had before, which came with another set of coaches from eBay that I bought previously, and this one came without any of the TPO accessories. I switched to using this coach as I had some initial problems with the new coach derailing. I wasn't quite sure why that was, and I thought I'd have to try to get back to trying that coach again. I thought it could be the springs in the levers of the new coach were stronger than those in the old coach, but that was just a guess. It may have just been, I thought, that I'd not railed the new coach properly. But no, in fact, I now realise that the problems I had with the new coach derailing were caused by my failure to carefully read the instructions. I did see the silver pins going through over the levers, but I assumed they were just some sort of spring that was fitted to this version. In fact, the instructions clearly say to remove these pins before operation, as they're just inserted to stop things rattling around during shipping, so that issue is now resolved. The coach would operate with the pins in place, but they did basically act like springs and made the operation much stiffer. And with the pins in place, the coach kept derailing. But now they just pull out. You just get hold of them by the curved ends and pull them right out, and they're out, and then it works much more freely. I initially coupled the mail coach to this Fowler 4P tank engine, since I had that loco on the layout, but there proved to be an issue with this. This loco had caddy couplings on it when I bought it, and I switched them out and replaced them with hook and loop couplings, see part 5 of this series. When I attached the replacement couplings, I used the nuts and bolts that had been used to attach the caddy couplings. This resulted in the bolts protruding a bit below the couplings. This had caused no problems with running this loco on the layout until now, but those protruding bolts wouldn't clear the bumper pieces for the TPO system, so the 4P loco simply wasn't able to pass over those bumpers as it was. Since I wanted to get on with testing the TPO system, I just switched over to using the Jinty to pull the mail coach and put the problem with the bolts on the couplings of the 4P aside to be dealt with later. This picture was actually taken after my first successful trial with the TPO system. You can see the bumper for operating the drop-off arm of the coach on the tracks in the bottom centre of the picture, and beside that is a red mailbag which has just been dropped off after having been picked up from the hook at the far end of the layout. The bumpers don't fit neatly into the Backman Easy track as they presumably would into Hornby track, but I did find that I could get them to sit down with their ends between the sleepers of a straight in a way that was functional. This was all just a very initial test, and I didn't make any attempt to fix anything into place in any permanent way. Here's a pickup in progress at the other end of the layout. The pickup arm is out and is just about to pull the mailbag off from the hook. Because the Bachmann Easy Track is raised about 3/16 of an inch from the ground by its attached plastic ballast base, I found that I had to put something underneath the base of the hook to raise it to a height where it would work. I found it quite tricky to get the hook the right distance from the track and in the right position relative to the bumper operating the lever, and all of this has to be correct to a fairly precise degree for the pickup process to work properly. Here's the drop-off arm opening to drop off a bag, which can just be seen inside it. Setup for the drop-off is less critical, since so long as the drop-off arm is opened, it will eject any bag that is in it. I did find that sometimes a bag would get picked up from the hook but wouldn't drop into the drop-off arm, getting stuck inside the pickup arm instead. I think this was just a result of doing the pickup too gently so that the bag didn't get snapped in. Here the Ginty is just going off with the mail coach after dropping off the second bag. As you may see, the bags get ejected just around the start of the bumper piece in the track. Here's a bag hanging on the hook waiting for pickup. The ladder is in place now. I found that I had to use a knife on the slot for the base of the ladder in order to clear the slot a bit to get the ladder to fit in. As noted, the positioning of the hook is quite critical. It must be the correct distance from the track and positioned correctly relative to the lever operating bumper. I did return to the problem with the bolts on the couplings of the 4P. Since the bolts themselves were made of brass, it was actually quite easy to grind them down flush with the nuts using a grinding wheel on a Dremel tool. Here's the other coupling, the front one, after the bolt has been ground down. Unfortunately, even after grinding the bolts down, there was still a bit of an issue with this loco and the bumpers. Oddly enough, the loco seemed to pass over the bumper at the pickup location with no problem at all, but despite multiple attempts to adjust the bumper piece, it was very difficult to get the 4P to pass over the bumper at the drop-off location without derailing. As you may see here if you look very closely, the wheels of the front pony truck are getting lifted off the rails as the pony truck goes over the bumper. Unless the loco is taken over the bumper track extremely slowly and evenly, this results in that front pony truck derailing. I'm not sure what, if anything, can be done about this. Anyway, now let's just see a little video of the TPO mail coach operating. Okay, so here we are looking at a bag on the hook, and here comes the TPO. Unfortunately, I've got the hook too close to the track, so the bag gets knocked off by the front of the coach instead of getting caught in the pickup arm. Now, you might well ask at this point, how come I don't know that and fix the problem? The problem is that this is happening at the far end of the layout, and I'm operating the train from the other end.
Way too close.
See, I don't know what's happening here because I can't really see it. I'm short-sighted, and this is at the far end of the layout. In any case, even if I wasn't short-sighted, I don't know whether I'd be able to see because it's on the far side of the train. So it's a little hit and miss. I don't quite know what's happening. So I'm having another try. Unfortunately, I still have the hook too close to the track. Now, of course, if you were using Hornby track, you wouldn't have this problem because they supply, that forked clip that would clip right into the track and position the base of the hook precisely. But I'm not using Hornby track, so I'm having to approximate. So we put the bag back on the hook again if we can. Of course, the hook can swivel, so that's a little tricky to do. And I moved it a little further back from the track this time, and I'm just tapping down the bumper set in the middle of the track because that's not really fixed in place either. It's just kind of set in place between the sleepers, but it's a bit approximate. So here comes the train again. It kind of looked as if it worked that time, I thought, but actually I don't think it quite did. It nearly worked, but I think the bag kind of it certainly didn't hit that by the coach. It got hit by the pickup arm, but then I think it bounced out. It bounced out. Yes, see, I picked it up off the ground. There, it was on the ground, not still inside the coach. It did get hit by the pickup arm, but not quite in the right way to get it inside the pickup arm. It fell onto the ground. So we've moved the hook back a little more, well, maybe a little further from the track, and certainly a little further back earlier than the bumper. And here we go again. And this time it works. This time the arm comes out and the bag actually gets picked up into and taken away in the arm. In fact, if anything, the hook may be a hair higher than it needs to be now. Again, that height would be set automatically if we were clipped into Hornby track, but I'm just putting it beside the easy track, and I've got it on a piece of foam board to raise it up to approximately the right height relative to the track. But it did work that time. And ultimately, of course, I'll be fixing it somewhat in place in the right position. These are just initial experiments. The hook can be fixed permanently on the layout. It doesn't need to be messed around with. And here we come again, and we get another successful pickup. So I just need to, make sure I've got this adjusted right, and then note down where the hook needs to be and fix it more permanently in place. And now let's just have a look at the operation of the other end, the drop-off process. I haven't bothered to put the kiosk in place here. There you go, you see the arm opened and it just flicked the bag out beside the track. You're supposed to really put the pickup kiosk beside the track there to catch the bags. So now let's just see if we can look at those processes in slow motion. So I've got this video running at 25% speed. So the train is coming here, but of course it's coming slowly because it's only coming at a quarter of its real speed. And hopefully we'll be able to somewhat see how the pickup process works here. Train comes round the corner. As the levers in the middle of the train get over the bumper, the pickup arm opens and the bag gets picked up into the pickup arm. And just to look at the drop-off process in slow motion. Again, you can see the bumper on the track with its raised part on the right-hand side, and as the levers go over it, it'll push the right-hand lever up, the drop-off arm will come out, and the bag will fall out of the bottom of it. There you go. And you're really, as I say, you're really supposed to put like a little catching kiosk thing beside there, and I will at some point, but I didn't bother for this initial trial. So there you go. We got it. We did get it basically working initially. So that's my operating Royal Mail coach set, LMS Royal Mail coach set. If you have any comments or questions about this, please post in the comments below.